Right, what have I got today? Boosh. Well, it doesn't even fit in the frame, it's so big, so not a good start there. Why is it so big? But we'll get on with it. It's just a big box perhaps. So today is the brand new Astrolux HL02. Very similar name to the Convoy. Now where's the Convoy? The Convoy H1. I suppose L stands for headlamp maybe, and same with this. This was the H1. I've been using this a bit more. I still think there was a lot of things that could have changed on this, but we'll stick to this review for now. So this is the Astrolux HL01. Now I've been looking forward to this. It comes in 3 colours, and I'll open this while I'm telling you about them. I think there's one called Stonewash. I'm not sure why they call it Stonewash, because it looks way too silvery to me. I mean, a Stonewash for me is on this knife here. You can see this is the normal stainless steel here, but you can see this is the Stonewash here, where you can see it's got a sort of a matte finish to it. It's got like a little bit of a texture there, whereas the images of the silver version I've seen look too shiny, but they call it Stonewash anyway. So you've got Stonewash, you have a normal black one, which will be similar to most flashlights and headlamps that you get, and then you also have a gunmetal, which is what I've gone for, gunmetal grey. So let's see what you get in the box. You get this load of rubbish, so we'll chuck that away. There's a little thing which I probably won't look at. That is your headband, which I'll go over in a second. There is a secondary tube. Now that allows you to use different batteries, but again, I'll go over that in a second, so I'll put them to just one side. And I think that's all you get. You get a little bit of the silica there to get rid of any moisture, and there's the unit itself. So boosh, drop kick the box into the bin. Right, so here's the unit here. So let's get a nice close look at it. Now, I know for me, initial impressions, it looks great. It looks rugged, it looks militarized, it looks like a nice piece of kit, but when I'm first picking this up, it's rather heavy, and that's before I've even got a cell in. I'll just check this doesn't have a cell in. Let's have a look, and it doesn't. There's no cell in there at the moment, but we'll go over that in a second. So first impressions, looks okay in the hand, but size wise, absolutely, it's a whopper. So let's just compare that quickly to one of my favorites, which is the Skill Hunt H03. So let's look at the size difference. Now let's bring them together. Rather a large size difference there, isn't there? Even from a side profile, so very interesting. So, but we'll go over that. So let's talk about the specifics of this whilst I give you some little shots of it. So this comes with 4 emitter options. When I say emitter, I just mean the LED that you choose for the one that you're going for. So on this one, and I'll double check by looking at the box. So if you look at the back of the box here, I went for the XPL. I don't know why they don't tell you which Cree emitter it is. Excuse me. After a little bit of looking into it, it's the XPL-HI. High just stands for high intensity. So you get a nice high intensity beam from this. And this, the one I went for is the 5000K version. So let's get rid of that. Now, the options you do have, you can have the XPL high in 4000K, which is a very yellowy light, very warm. Then you have the 5000K in XPL high, which is what I've gone for here. And if you also like the cool white lights, you can go for the XPL high in 6500K. Now, when I say K, I'm just talking about Kelvin, and it's the tint of the light that comes out. So for example, here's the O light. This has a very yellowy, warm tint. So I'll show you that. So as you can see, very sort of similar to a natural neutral light. In other words, similar to sunlight. And if I compare that to something like a more whiter light, like on the HC65, can you see the difference there? I'll put them side by side. That's rather a white light there, and you can see the difference there, marked difference there. So this is the very yellowy neutral light, and this is the more white light. So what's the difference there? Some people say, well, yeah, you get better throw, but this isn't a throw with a neutral, but this isn't a review about throw. This is a review about a headlamp. So generally headlamps are for medium range to close. Most of the work you're going to be doing with the headlamp is camping, working on a car, close-up stuff. So throw isn't really an issue. I just prefer a more neutral light. It looks more like sunlight and it makes me smile. But don't let anyone tell you, you must buy cool white or you must buy neutral. Not necessarily, and that's why we have these options, which is nice. So you pick what you prefer there. Okay, so you can also get an SST20 emitter. Now that, unfortunately, your choices are limited with that emitter. It only comes in a 4000K, which is warm light. I prefer warm, so that wouldn't bother me too much, but that's the only SST20 emitter option you've got there. And they're the only other options. Now they're quoting a 1200 lumen output on this. From my testing, I'm guessing it's around 1000, although it seems to depend. This uses a FET driver. Now, because it's using a FET driver, it seems to draw more on a more high quality battery. So what I'm talking about here is the driver just sucks what it can from the battery. So the higher the amp on the battery, to a degree, you can't just keep upping the amps and getting a million candle, power. You're going to get more of a output on turbo. So for the testing on this, I've carried this for 2 weeks now, and I've tested it with a little, though you can't tell this I've gone for an ODB wrap here, and this is the Blood. So if you're a vampire, you'll love that. So underneath this wrap is a Samsung 30Q. Good bang for buck as cells go, and it's an 18650. Although, as I said before, if you don't want to use the 18650, you can change this central. So I'll show you what I'm talking about when I'm saying central. So if you take this off, and then you also take this off, so it screws top and bottom. If you were to change that round and use that as your tube, look, you can drastically change the size of this. Now, because of that, obviously, you're not going to get an 18650 cell in it. You'd have to use an 18350. So 18 just stands for the size there, and the 650 is this one, and the 350 is shorter. So if that interests you, and it certainly reduces the weight on this, which is one of the issues I'm going to talk about later on in the review, this will negate that to a degree. But not everyone has those cells. Most people, especially flashaholics, vapors and people like that, will have an 18650 knocking about. So I'll put that to one side because that's simply an added option. So push, chuck that one to the side for a moment, and we'll put this back together. In fact, before we put it together, let's have a close look at this. So here's the head. Now, the only thing I would say about the head of this is it reminds me of a meat tenderizer. So I'll bring a picture of what I'm talking about here. So get rid of that. So it reminds me of a meat tenderizer. So I want to go and buy a big steak from Texas and start battering it into submission. But that's a design choice, and I do like the grip that this offers. It is nice, and especially you need some sort of grip, because when you put these into the headbands, you need to be able to rotate them to change the angle of attack to whatever it is that you're doing. Nice tube, well made, looks like a double thickness, pretty decent, and the threads are decent as well. No issues there. It's got an O-ring there, nice to see, top and bottom. Plenty of good machine in there. There's no sort of scuff marks and gunge knocking about. The contacts look okay. There's a little bit of grime on this contact. I might clean that up with a bit of alcohol, but it seems okay. No particular issues. So we'll put that in there, and then we'll stick a cell in. Well, I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Now, as you can see, you've got the O-rings there. Now, that affords, in this design anyway, IPX7. Now, I would have preferred to have seen IPX8, difference being IPX8, if you can put this under 2 meters of water, so imagine 2 meters of water on top of that for a couple of hours without issue. This, unfortunately, is only coming in at IPX7. Now, IPX7 is still great. If off the top of my head, I think that means you can put it into 15 centimeters of water for 1 minute 30 seconds, but I will check that, and if I'm wrong, I'll put up the top here. So in other words, if you drop that in most puddles anyway, non-deep ones, if you take it out within a minute, you're fine. If you drop it in a particularly deep river, in rapids, you may have issues, but I would suggest that this is fine in most conditions that you'd find yourself out in. You certainly kind of go diving with this anyway, but that's enough. I would have preferred to see an 8, but not an issue. Now, one interesting feature, now I'll put the cell in to show you, and while I'm here, I just want to check these. Now, that's interesting. So it's got double springs. You see there's a spring there, and then there's one internally there inside that spring. Nice to see. So double springs, good quality. So we'll get the cell in there. So a positive terminal to the top, negative to the bottom there. And the issue I want to tell you about is USB charging. Now, some of the issues I have with USB charging on headlamps is they use these awful crappy flaps, and I'll show you what I mean here. Here's an example. Here's the SP40 by Sofern. Great light for the price, a massive steal for the price. I really enjoyed this one. I still use this now and then. Now here is the charging mechanism. Now unfortunately it's got one of these flaps. Now they're all right, but the problem is then you lose waterproofing. So you could go from an IPX7, this is going to drop at another, to an IPX6 for example, if you had it on this. So what they've intelligently done, and I like this. Now, if you can remember in my review of the Zanflare F1, it had a ring. Now, if you lowered the ring, so here's the ring, so watch this. So if you take this ring down, see the O-ring there? So you've got one O-ring, not just one O-ring, but look, two. So excellent work, Astrolux. I highly appreciate that. And there's a couple of indicator LEDs. So you're probably thinking, what are they for? Well, if you rotate it to this side, you've got USB charging and it's type C. So I'm a big fan of that because I don't want the old micro USB. I'm sick of carrying multiple leads, but I will test this for power delivery. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you would normally do it. So we'll use my old X-Tar power pack. I say old, I use it now, but it's not that old. So here's a lead. So if we put this in here, type A there, the right way up would help. And then if we plug that into the charging port, we'll see what happens. So these should light up. There you go. So they are red when it's charging. So that is now charging the battery. So that's great. This isn't ruining the waterproofing. It's under a double O-ring section, so that's excellent to see. I would have preferred to have seen, if I can find one, where is it? There's the Astrolux. The Astrolux FT03, which is a beautiful light, and I really like it. I prefer the charging to not have an indicator, and when you're charging, instead of green, this turns red. It turns into like a Sauron's eye. I prefer that, and I don't know why they chose to add this when you could have just used that as the indicator. It seems like a bit of a waste of space. They could have saved complexity, but okay, that's how they decided to do it. Who am I to argue? Now, one of the things I want to test for is, in fact, let's see what that's drawing at the moment. So it's about 5 volts and it's charging at 1.3 amps, so quite good. It's pushing quite a lot of juice into that battery, so nice to see. So it's charging relatively fast because of the Type C. Now, one thing I want to test for is power delivery. Now, in order to have power delivery tested, you need to go from a Type C, so that's Type C there, to another Type C. So we'll put that in and let's see what happens. So if this is built with the correct resistors in and circuitry, it will accept this. And it doesn't work, look. Not charging. There is no amps going through there. So this is, although it's Type C, which is fantastic, they didn't go the final stretch of completing the fact that it needs a little bit of extra work done to give it power delivery. So if you have a power delivery setup only, in other words, you go from a Type C to a Type C rather than a Type A to a Type C. I know it's starting to get a bit complex. Now, I'm going to do a video on this, so okay, bear with me. If you are under those specific sets of circumstances, not a lot of people are. I put a poll up recently to check that, and it was something like 8% of the people who replied said they were in that situation. Then you're out of luck, unfortunately. You're going to have to carry another lead with the Type A on. But I appreciate the fact it's got charging on and it's Type C, even though it's not 100% complete. So we'll knock half a point off for that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this light. So I've told you it's got a FET driver. Now, interestingly, it uses auxiliary lights. So what's an auxiliary light? Well, let's zoom in a bit here so we can see what I'm talking about. So if we can get that to focus, okay. Right, so you've got that LED in the center there, which is great. Now, if you can see, surrounding it are 4 auxiliary LEDs. Now, they are nowhere near as bright as the main emitter. Now, the point of those is to provide illumination and some feedback, which I'll go over in the Annual UI. Now, I have checked this. You can read a map if you have it on the bright setting. There are 2 settings on these auxiliaries. You have a low level, an on-off pulsing, and a high setting. The problem with the high setting is you're going to draw the battery quicker. Now, to be fair, there's very little draw from this. Generally, and I'm talking generally, I certainly haven't tested this, but generally you'll find with these auxiliary lights, it'll draw your whole battery out in about a year. So, but I charge my cells every sort of 2 to 3 months anyway. I just top them up, so it's not an issue for me, but it's something to be aware of. So you may not want to have that on the the mega bright setting, but that's up to you. So let's move this rubbish out the way and let's look at the headband. So here's the headband. Now they've done an okay job actually. If you remember, where is it? The H1 by Convoy had a bloody awful band. Here's the band. It was like an old piece of granny's knicker elastic. It was useless. And look at the flex on this. It's got more flex than a bodybuilding magazine. I mean, look at that. Talk about going floppy. That's not ideal. That felt cheap and nasty. Whereas this one has a bit of structure to it. I don't mind rubber on this because this is the bit that's going against your head. And if you're sweating and hiking and things like that, you appreciate that. You want as least irritation to your skin as possible. I'm sure people in the armed forces will agree with me there. I've always said this. It's not the desert that kills off the soldiers. It's the grain of sand in his boot. It wears you down, things like that. So you need good equipment that isn't irritating your skin and things like that. So they've done an okay, and I like a 3-pointer. So by 3-pointer, what I refer to is, if you imagine your head's in here, this goes over the top of the head, and this goes around the circumference of the cranium here. So nice to see, and it fits in like this. It's not a quick release. I'll show you what I'm talking about when I say quick release. So if we'll talk about this is the Wizard Pro V3 by Army Tech. So if we look at their implementation, they have a clicker system. So again, a 3-point, but watch. You can get it, click it in, rotate it without issue, and you can quickly take it out. Look how fast that is compared to mucking around with these ones where it's like, putting a marshmallow in a piggy bank. You're squeezing it in, going, go on, get in there. They're a little bit more irritating. So there's not a lot you can do about that though, unfortunately. That's the design I've chosen to go with. And to be fair, a lot of the people who design these go with that. If we look at, for example, the Skill Hunt. If you bear with me just a second, I can hear like a police chase outside. Oh, they've stopped. They've either crashed or caught the criminal. Okay. So again, the Skill Hunt have gone for a similar design. Olight have gone for a semi-similar, but it's got a plastic here, and then it's got the rubber section that goes over the top. And Sofern, theirs is a little bit floppy, but it's certainly a lot better than the H1 by Convoy. And this one I had no problems with. I jogged about a little bit with it, but this was fine, but the weight of the unit itself wasn't for jogging, which I'm going to go over in the summing up anyway. So let's move all this rubbish out of the way. Now, what I could do is at this point, I could read all this out. The problem is, watch. Look how big this gets. Now, Anduril is fantastic. Now, there's a little cheat sheet if you want it. They've called that UI picture, whatever the hell that means. So, UI picture. There's Anduril. So if you have a photographic memory, you can look at that and go, I know exactly what to do. In reality, it's not quite that simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the light, and then I'm going to go over the Anduril UI. So let's talk about this quickly. I like it so far. I mean, it's got a ramping interface, which is excellent. It's got around 1,000 lumens. It's heat step down I couldn't get to kick in, although it's been absolutely freezing where I am. And I was testing this primarily on the coast in bitter winds, running up and down cliff faces and in woodlands and things like that. It was absolutely freezing. I couldn't really feel my fingers because it's winter at this time of the year in this part of the planet. But I really appreciate the design. It's nice, it's rugged. Now, if you notice, now I always carry lights for at least 2 weeks to make sure on these things. Now, I can't see any damage there, but if you look on this section, can you see the paintwork starting to come off? Now, if that's starting to come off after 2 weeks, I would suggest after 6 months, you're going to get a lot of silvering where the paint has come off. It hasn't come off another bit. It's come off on the sharpest edges only. There was a little bit down here there. Yeah, there was a little bit there, and there was a few funny marks on the paint. There was another one down there somewhere, but that was how it arrived. So paint works okay. It's certainly not up to jet beam standards where it's really good. But it's okay. But like I say, I just want to make mention that you can see it's starting to come off there and come off there. Now, that's just been in various pockets, jeans pockets, fleece pockets, coat pockets, near keys, near spare change and things like that. But it's done okay. So what I want to talk about just briefly is the reflector that they've chosen to use here. Now, what they've done is they've chosen to use an orange peel reflector, which I think is a good choice. I would maybe have preferred to have seen a TIR, so I'm going to quickly go over what that means. So if you bear with me a few seconds, I'll get me little drawing pad. Right. Here we go. Right, so if this makes you cry, quickly use the fast forward button just on the bottom here. But I want to quickly go over this because it falls into what I'm going to talk about later on in regards to the beam profile on this light. So normally you have a LED and your light, you've got a little plastic bead that goes over the top there. And light comes out willy-nilly. It doesn't particularly go anywhere other than all over the place. There's no steering. So generally what you can do is, now if I can find one, if you bear with me just a few seconds, there's one. So here's an extreme example. You can have what's called a smooth reflector. So you can see the emitter in the middle there, and then around it you have this smooth reflector. So let's imagine that as a cross section. So you've got your LED, and then you have this smooth reflector. So you have your light that comes out, which is your spill. It hits the wall, and then you have this directed light from this smooth reflector, which is your this is your spotlight. This is in the middle. This is your spot. So if we turn this on, you can see these zones. So easy to see here. Here's your spill, direct from the LED, and there's your spot. Now the whole point of this is this spot, you're able to project this a long distance. So if you want to see across a field, boom, it travels. Excellent. Not so good for close up because look, especially at higher levels, I can't even read that text. You see, you can in the spill section, but in the spot it's useless. So very irritating up close. Yes, you can negate that by bringing it back, but then you've got to be a contortionist, or you can lower the output level right down so it's less of an option, but it's still there. It's still an irritation. So one method around that is to use an orange peel reflector. So a good example of that would be what the SP40 by SoFirm did. Now it's called orange peel because if you look at the texture of that reflector, it's not smooth, is it? Like the one I showed you before. It's like the surface of an orange. So what you have is there's a cross section and it's got pits and aberrations. It's certainly not smooth, as you can see with the naked eye there. So you still get your spill and you get a spot, but there's a transition between the spot and the spill, so you get less of a pronounced zone. So if we turn this on, I'll show you what I mean. You can see there's a spot there, but you see how it's transitioned and it's less irritating. Look, it's not covering up that text in a way where I can no longer read it. It's certainly irritating, but it's not irritating to the same degree. So I would argue that this is best for mid-range and close-up. You can certainly get away with it. Now, one way of forgoing all of that and saying, well, I'll just not bother with a reflector, what I'll do is I'll use a lens. So you can have your LED and then you plonk over the top this solid medium. So this isn't empty space. This is a solid piece of plastic. It's a lens. So you're trying to beamform the light almost. So what happens is the light bounces around inside, and it's called total internal reflection. So you might say TIR lens, and the light emanates how you dictate depending on the design. Now most of them have like this bug-eyed faceted look. So for example, now I've got this on maximum. That's well over 2000 lumens there, so it's on maximum. As you can see, there's no real spot obscuring things. There is there, can you see there just basically, but then it quickly disappears. So that it's really not suffering from the same problems. The only issue with that is, and look, it's great, it saves space, you haven't got a big reflector. The problem with that is you can't get it to go distance. Once you get to that stage, well, the only way to keep trying to get distance when you've got a TIR is to keep pumping more lumens to, and there comes a point when you say to yourself, well, I'm going to have to go and get a thrower. So these are great for up close and mid range. They're rubbish at long range, whereas this is great for long range, but it's rubbish up close. So the happy medium, I would argue, there will be people who disagree with that, is the orange peel reflector, as you can see there. Now, unfortunately, they haven't made this wide enough, and I'm going to try and explain. So let's get rid of that, and I'll try and explain what I'm talking about here. So let's put down a piece of white so we can see what's happening. So we'll turn this on. Right. Now, can you see how wide this actual beam is? Okay. So you can see the width there. In fact, I'll put it like that. So you can see ignore this here. This is reflections from this metal ring here, but here's your main section of usable lights. Okay, so there's the width. Now let's compare that to a SoFirm SP40, which I applauded for the width. So we'll turn that on and I'll turn it up a bit there. Right, can you see the difference here? See what's happening? So let's look at this. So not very wide, and that's much wider. Now, why would that be? Who cares? Who really cares? You're probably asking. Well, I care, because the problem is, and I'll show you. When you are walking around, and I'll use the back of this, okay, so here's me walking about in the dark, okay, minding my own business, and I've got a headlamp on. Now what happens is the beam hits the floor. Now that when it's not very wide, it does that. Now the problem is when you're in the mountains or outdoors or wherever, your peripheral vision accounts for balance and allowing you to negotiate the challenges of wherever you are. The thinner this beam is, the more difficult it becomes. What you need is a nice wide beam. Now the obvious answer is use a TIR, but this isn't a TIR light. So what you need to do is you need to get some width. So if you compare that to the SP40, the SP40's beam, by the time it hits the floor, because it's so much wider, you're getting this much wider beam. It's giving you more information. When you're firing it down to your feet, you're getting more of a peripheral vision. You've got more that you're able to see and more that you're able to do. And it's less stressful. It's probably not such an issue up close, you know, working in a fuse box or whatever, or under your car. But if you're hiking or walking or camping, unfortunately, I don't think they've made this wide enough. They may have not even considered that. I don't know whether the people at Astrolux go camping. Who knows? But that was one of the things I liked about this, and one reason why TIRs are great. It spreads out nicely. In fact, it was one of the reasons why I like the HC65. Look, let's have a look at this. See that? See the width? Nice and wide. I think it's something like 120 degrees off the top of my head. The Nightcore HC65. You want a nice wide beam. Okay, so that's enough whinging about beams and doing silly pictures of me wandering around in the night, minding my own business. Right, let's get rid of that and try and move on here, because time's ticking. Okay, so let's talk about the good points and the bad points, and then right at the end I'll go through Andural, because some people may already know it and it's a very complex UI. It's probably going to take me about 5 to 10 minutes to go through that. Okay, so let's talk about the good points and the bad points. Right, good points. Recessed button. I really like that. Look, see how it's recessed? So in order to actuate that, you have to press it properly. For example, if you pack this away, look, you can't turn it on by accident. Yes, you can at extreme angles. I understand that. But in general, it's not going to be put on by accident, which is absolutely fantastic. So I like to see that. I like a recessed button. They also had the recessed button slightly anyway on the FT03. You can see it popping out a little bit there, but I prefer that. This also has a magnetic base. So if I get that knife again, there you go. So boom. Nice strong magnet. It needs to be because of the weight of this, but nice strong magnet. It means you can stick it under the car, stick it to other things. It's not so, interestingly, it's not so useful when you're camping, because trees are made out of wood and there's not so many places to stick it, for want of a better term. But that is an option. It's great around the house and in the garage and things like that. That is a nice option, and I have used that, and I do use that, so I appreciate that. So nice mag base, by standard, recessed button. I love Andural, and I will go over that now. It's so comprehensive. You've got so many options and modes. It's absolutely fantastic. And this is a ramping interface. So it turns on, you ramp it down, and you ramp it up. Dead simple. There's not 15,000 different modes. Right, triple click to get into, section 4 is 400 lumens and all this malarkey. You just ramp it up and you ramp it down. It's that simple. It couldn't be any easier. I really appreciate that. I love the way they've double O-ringed the USB port. It's got charging built in. Absolutely fantastic. I just wish they'd put power delivery on there. They're going to lose half a mark for that, but okay. Not that only affects, according to my latest poll, that only affects a certain proportion of people anyway. Price, it's starting to grow. I think it should be about $5 cheaper for what you're getting, and it is just an Astrolux, but okay, it's not too bad, but that's okay. The OP reflector I think works, and I like the fact that they give you if I can find it, if you bear me a few seconds, there it is, the 18350 option, and it comes as standard. It's not something you have to go and order from some random person in China. I like that, so that's a good option. So straight off, on paper, you're probably thinking, well, this is absolutely fantastic. It's got Type-C charging. It's got an extra tube there, a mag base. It's solid. It's got auxiliary lights. It's got recessed buttons, mag bases. What can TrailTrek have to complain about? Well, I do have some things to complain about, so let's go over them now. Okay. You'll probably see this with the beam shots, but there's a bit of a green tint to this. To me, it's only noticeable if you're a little bit of a tint snob and you're comparing it. If you're not comparing it, you probably won't notice it. But if you are well into your tints, you may find this has a little bit of green to it, like the EC01 did. I love the EC01, but when you're comparing it to something like an S11, the S11's beautiful tint. It was very green in comparison. So if you're not comparing it, you probably won't notice, but if you are, you will, put it that way. And then I want to talk about size. Let's compare. Look, why is it so big? I don't understand. Now, first off, you could say, oh, stop complaining, TrailTrek. The reason it's bigger is because it's got USB charging. Well, I don't agree with that because, look, let's have a look. Let's see what we've got here. Right, so there's the SP40, right? That's got USB charging, but that's not massive. Look, we'll line the bases up. Massive size difference, weight difference as well. Why does this weigh so much? I don't understand. I know batteries, magnets can add a little bit of weight. Yes, I perfectly understand that, but that's not what's going on here. I don't think that what's going on is the magnet is adding a lot of weight, because it seems to be heavy in the head. I don't know why they made this like a meat tenderizing mallet. I think they've made this is too heavy for a headlamp. And the reason why you don't want a heavy headlamp is because it's hanging off your head. It gives you neck strain, and as soon as you start building up speed or going up and down steps, it starts jiggling. The less weight you can get in your head, the better. Also, if you're in windy conditions and you're using the mag base, it can slip because it's so heavy. I mean, you compare that to most of the, in fact, look, I'll compare it. So here's a lot of the headlamps which I've used and tested in depth. So look at the size, and it's bigger and heavier than all of them. Why? I don't understand. Even something like that, even something like this, you can't use the excuse, well, it's because it's rugged. It looks rugged. Yes, I agree. This has a 10 meter drop rate, and this one, they don't even tell you. I'm presuming it's 1 meter-ish. This has, can go, 10 meters underwater. This is only IPX7. So why, I don't understand why this is so heavy and so large, and I think that's its downfall. I was very excited to see this on paper. You've got auxiliary lights, recessed button, angular, double O-ring Type-C charging. The price isn't too bad. You've got a magnetic base, you've got an orange peel reflector, you've got extra tubes. Excellent on paper. Unfortunately, slightly green tint. It's a little bit too big. It weighs too much. The beam angle isn't enough. So there are things which I think they're onto a winner, right? But they need to change those things. Okay, even if they didn't change the green tint, because most people won't notice that, they need to get the size of this down. They must get the size of this down. Do a version 2 if you want, or call it, the HL02. Take the size down, change the beam angle, and get this weight down. I mean, listen, I'll do a non-scientific test. Here's the HO3, listen. Not a lot going on, right? Listen to this. That sounds like a 50 caliber, shell hitting the floor. I don't know what's going on. So a little bit too heavy. So I'm going to give this a mark. I will go out, but just before that, I'll show you the UI. So I'm going to give this 7 out of 10. Now you're probably thinking, well, that's a little bit low. That's not fair. This isn't a premium device. How dare you give that a low mark? Compared to something like the Olight Nova, which is much more expensive. It is more expensive, but it's not so big. It's not so heavy. It's got better IPX ratings. So I think do an HL02 or do a version 2 of this. Get the weight down, get the size down, and this will be much better. I would love this. I think it's a little bit of a missed opportunity. If weight and size don't bother you, then just disregard everything I'm saying, because apart from them, it's a great light. It's fine. I've had no real major issues. I've carried this with me a couple of weeks. No issues. I really like it. So 7 out of 10. I think it deserves that. I've got to be honest, because I notice a lot of these review channels now, they read they get this, they read the specs out of the box and they go, amazing, super bright, and they don't give it a mark out of 10. Or any mark. That's not a review, is it? You've got to be honest. So it's 7 out of 10. So if you don't want to know about the UI, you can skip to the next bit, but I'm going to cover Angular UI. Right, before we lose any light, I'm going to move these out the way and go over this UI. So I'm going to try and do this rapidly. So you got one click on, one click off. Dead simple. One click on, one click off. Now when it's on, you can ramp it. So you click and hold, and it ramps up to its maximum. Boosh, you see there's a little flicker. You may or may not see that. It's probably imperceptible because of the device I'm recording on, but there are a little flicker, and then boom, there's a little flicker there to tell you that's the lowest setting. Okay, so it's nice and smooth. Now if you don't like a smooth ramping, that's fine. What you can do is when it's on, you can change it to a step. So what you do is you go 1 2 3, and there's a little bit of a flicker there. Now watch, see how it flickers, bang bang bang. So watch, 1 2 3 4. See how there's a perceptible step. If you don't like that, 1 2 3, bam, a little bit of a flicker, and it's back to smooth ramping. Okay, so if you want to go to your maximum output, so bear in mind you've got the low to high there, but you do have the maximum output, which is they refer to as turbo. So 2 clicks, boom, very bright. I'm guessing that's at least 1,000 lumens, although as I've mentioned, because of the FET driver, that may depend on the cell that you're using. If you're using a crappy low amp cell, you're either not going to get that at all, or it's going to be very brief. I certainly couldn't get step down on this because it's not hot enough here. So they're your main options. Okay, now other than that, you have check modes. So 3 clicks, battery check mode. So what's battery check mode? Well, I shall explain. So if we wait a second, so what it does is it flashes out information. So we've got 1 2 3, okay, so 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, so 3.9. So 3.9 is referring to the voltage of the battery. So when it's fully charged, it's 4.20. Once you start getting, once the cell starts depleting, you get way down towards the 2.5 level where you really should be charging. It's very low. So that's the voltage that's coming from the battery. So nice to see. I mean, some people may have preferred a percentage, as in, like, I don't know, 10 clicks for 100, and 1 click for 10% or something like that. But this is aimed at flashaholics, so they would prefer to have the voltage, which is absolutely fine. Now within this mode, you can go between separate modes. So if you bear me a few seconds, double click. Now see there's a flicker there, and then it's on normal light. So they call this sunset mode. Some people call it good night mode. So what happens is it goes from this level of intensity, and over the next hour it will ramp slowly down to off. I presume that's for people who are scared of the dark and think that a skeleton's going to jump out from under the bed and kill them. So if you're not really the sort of person who's scared of skeletons and ghosts, you may not find a use for that. I'm not scared of the dark, so it doesn't bother me, but it's there for children or adults who find a use for that. I'm not particularly interested in that. So within that, you've also got another 2 clicks, takes you to the next mode, which is beacon mode. Now, very useful. I sometimes use beacon mode, so double click. And I like the beacon mode on this. It's quite good. So what it does is, boom, it's very momentary. So I'll show you there. It's a very rapid momentary flash. So from a distance, that's great. So if you need to use that as a marker or a rally point, or something like that, maybe it's a military application, something like that, camping, handy. You could also use that in an emergency as well. So it's certainly not going to run the cell down, but it's going to give you a long period of marking flashes like that, which I like. So pretty good. I like to see that. I like a good beacon mode. I don't always have a need for the SOS ones and things like that, but okay, I don't really think that's necessary. And then another 2 clicks takes you to temperature check. So here we go. So 1 2. In fact, I'll wait until it starts again, because it's sometimes difficult to check. Right. So 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. So 44 degrees, I presume that's Fahrenheit. It's certainly not 44 degrees Celsius, otherwise my face would be melting. So I presume that's in Fahrenheit. So that's a way of checking the temperature. Now, it's not the temperature here, it's the temperature internal. So if you're running turbos and changing when it steps down, that's a handy tool. But some people won't really need to use that. And then if you want to go back to normal, just turn it off and you're back to normal. So you can ramp it up and you can ramp it down. Okay, so you also have 4 clicks, which is lockout. Now, what's the point of lockout? Well, lockout means you can't accidentally turn it on. So 1 2 3 4, there's a little bit of a flash there, right? It means you can't turn the light on by accident, although it does have a mode. So when it's in this mode, so you can't turn it on, you can get a momentary emergency mode. So you press and hold, you see you've got this momentary emergency mode. And it's not the old momentary emergency mode, it's the new mode where you can have two of them. So if you double click, you get a little bit more brightness. I think that's an excellent feature. If you just want to quickly use it without unlocking it, there, you read a map or whatever, or if you need extra light, double click, and you've got enough to do some work, let go, bang. Back in your pocket, it isn't going to get turned on by accident. I really like that feature. I'm a big fan. Now, if you have a flashlight that doesn't have that feature, you're perfectly at liberty to just use a physical lockout. So if you want to do a physical lockout, you would just do that. You're physically locking out the circuit, as in you are not allowing the circuit to complete, so it can't be turned on. But I still prefer an E-lockout, because when you've got the E-lockout, turn it on there. When you've got the E-lockout, you've got these nice little features and double like that. Now within this mode, you'll notice the auxiliary lights are doing something. Okay, so you're probably thinking, well, who cares? Well, it's flashing, which is telling you what's happening here. So you can just look at that and know that it's in lockout mode. Now within that, now if I remember rightly, I think it's it might be 3 clicks, but I'll just check. So 1, 2, 3. Right, yes, and it cycles through. So you can see the auxiliary lights are doing nothing now, even though it's locked out. And then 1, 2, 3, you have normal mode. Then 1, 2, 3, you have a bright mode. Then 1, 2, 3, you have a pulse mode. I prefer the pulse mode because I can just look at it and know, okay, it's in lockout mode. I know straight away, and it's not going to run the battery down. I prefer that. You can also use that as something of a beacon if you just leave it. It's not as bright as the true beacon mode, but it's okay at close range. Okay, so you're probably thinking, anything else in this UI? Well, there's 5 clicks, which gives you momentary mode. So we'll go back to normal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bang. Right, you've got momentary mode. So momentary mode is all or nothing. So when you press it, on. As soon as you let go, it's off. Or sometimes known as a tactical mode. I guess it's known as a tactical mode because you would sometimes use that if you were operating a firearm. You know, although that's a very specialist thing, you would momentary on, off, because you don't want to give away your position once you move. But momentary mode can be very handy for lots of different applications. So that's the only problem with that is you can't disengage it. You can't say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and disengage it. It's tactical and that's it. That's okay. That suits tactical because you don't want to make mistakes with tactical. You want to know exactly what it's going to do. So the only way to kill that mode is to disengage the circuit. So you disengage the circuit, you kill all memory of that, and it's back to normal. Okay. So you also have 6 clicks, which is muggle mode. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A little bit of a flash there. Muggle mode. Now, muggles are just non-magic users in the Harry Potter universe. So in other words, what they're referring to is non-flashaholics. So if you were to hand this to a non-flashaholic, you don't want them going in all those modes and getting it all messed up and getting all confused and having a meltdown. So turn it on. It operates semi-normal. So what happens is you can ramp it up a little bit, not all the way, and you can ramp it down again, not all the way. So you're losing the low end of the ramp and you're losing the high end of the ramp, but you're avoiding complexity, which a muggle would not want to have to deal with, which is fine. I've got no problems with that. So make sure you turn that off though. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, you're back to normal, so let's just check that. Yeah, it ramps much higher now, and it should ramp much lower. Yes, you're back to normal. Okay, you also have 7 clicks. So before I run out of breath, I'll go over those. Okay, so 7 clicks are the backlight modes. Now, I did cover the auxiliary backlight modes within the lock mode, but you can do it with the 7 clicks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you see you've gone right up to... Now, bear in mind, it's not locked out here, so you've got very bright there. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you've got pulsing. You see it pulsing there? Quite an interesting. It pulses low, then it pulses high. So I quite like that. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You've got off, so no backlight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Back to normal, okay? So that option's there. Right, we're nearly finished. The finish line is within sight. So you also have click, click, hold modes. So click, click, hold means you click, click, hold basically. So I'll start, but I'll go through them one at a time. So let's click, click, hold. Right, now can you see see that flickering? Can you see what's happening here? Now that's not the camera. So what that's called is called candle mode. So I'll turn it down so it's easier to see. Let's turn it down a bit there, and I'll get a bit closer. Now can you see the flicker? So as a candle flame would do, it splutters in its intensity. It can sometimes splutter in and out. It's supposed to mimic a candle. You know, if you want to be romantic and put some Barry White on, maybe you would have a use for this. I don't know. Okay, so now when you're in these click, click, hold modes, what you can do is you can double click to advance to the next mode. So that's candle, and if you click and hold again, you get bike mode. So double click takes you to bike mode. Now as you can see, bike mode gives you good intensity, but then it gives you these momentary flashes. Now that's supposed to draw attention to yourself, which is exactly what you need on a bicycle, because there's always someone in a car trying to kill you basically. So nice feature to have. It also brings attention to itself. You could use that in a beacon fashion. Now if you want, you can ramp it up and you can ramp it down. You can do exactly the same in the previous mode, which is the candle mode. So there's a lot of ability to configure things here, which I really like. So the next mode after that, I think is party mode. So double click. Now I'll hide that because I don't want to annoy people with epilepsy and things like that. So here's your party mode. So it's not at its maximum intensity, but it's a strobe mode. Now what you can do is you can change the frequency of this mode. So now what you need to do is to do this, you need to, I think it's click and hold. There, and then you see it speeding up faster. In fact, that's gone slower, sorry. And then if you click and hold, it's going to change and get faster. There you go, right. It's getting faster. There, it's very rapid now. I'll cover that so it's not annoying anyone. So click and hold to ramp it down and get slower, and click and hold to get faster. So again, highly configurable. You can configure the strobes as you like. Now, taking it out of that mode, the next one after that is, I think it's called something like tactical strobe, but I will try that. So click, click, hold, and we're back to those strobes. So if we go to the next mode, which is double click, okay, see that's much more intense. So that's a tactical strobe. So what's happening there is it's giving you the absolute maximum output with a strobe. And again, you can configure that. So you can click and hold and it changes the intensity. And then click and hold and then slower. So you can change the frequency of that strobe. Again, however, because I mean, some people say a slow strobe is better than a fast one for an attacker and all sorts of things like that. It depends. It really depends. So turn that off. So those are your main options. You also have one more, which I'll show you. So turn that off. Click, click, hold. There's your tactical strobe. You have lightning storm, so we'll go to that. There, that's lightning storm. So lightning storm is nothing, and then you get this flickering, alternating, infrequent burst of light, like a lightning storm. There. So if it's Halloween, maybe you want that if you're a vampire who lives in a castle in Romania or something like that. So nice option to have. So I've given this a mark out of 10, 7 out of 10. I think it deserves that. I've got to be honest with these things. I wanted to like it more. Things need fixing. Too heavy, too big. Beam needs to be a bit wider, and maybe be a bit more selective on the tints, something like that, and get rid of that green. But other than that, they've done a good job. So enough of me waffling. You've probably had quite enough of listening to my voice. I'm going to go outside and I'm going to give you loads of beam shots. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to show it right next to other lights, because I think it's very important to compare these things, because if you don't compare them, then you know you're not giving people enough options. So I'm going to compare it to all of these lights here. I mean, I can quickly go over them now. I mean, if you want to spend big bucks, the Army Pro is certainly more rugged, and the TIR is excellent up close. You could go for the cheap H1, which is lacking in a lot of respects, especially the headband. I mean, it's absolutely useless. It's like, you know, pre-war knicker elastic or something. I think this is well worth the money, the Skill Hunt H03. They are bringing out a newer version of this, but they didn't really tweak it enough to, you know, warrant me having a look at it. But this has got loads of modes, a beautiful TIR, dead light, dead slim. I mean, look, very, very slim, very light, very small. I really enjoyed that. If you want to spend big money again, you could go for the Olight, which has magnetic charging, although you do have to use their batteries, which is very naughty Olight, because it costs 3 times what a normal 18650 should cost. So that I don't like that. I'm not a big fan of that. This has onboard charging, the Armitech Wizard Pro V3, but you don't have to use their cells. You can use any 18650, so it is possible. Or for a budget one, SP 40 by Sofern. Excellent light, dead light. It just works. Beautiful. I mean, it's certainly not fully waterproof, but great beam. Excellent for the price. I think Sofern did a great job. And if you want something a bit more professional, you go for the HC65, but it does cost a lot of money. But with that, you're getting the smooth reflector for distance if you need it. You've also got a, I'll show you, you've got a red light there, which is handy for certain circumstances. And you've also got a auxiliary LED, which has a high CRI value. CRI just stands for Color Reproduction Index. In other words, it gives it a very, in fact, I'm not going to go over that on this review because it's getting far too long. We're going to be, 4 hours later. It's like the omnibus edition with director's commentary over the top. So enough of me waffling. Come on, let's get outside.